What a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show, as sharing the show increases the live audience, of course, and this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Massive shout out to Joey for the super chat. Keep up truth, Nate Dogg. Louisiana in the house. Very good. Right, and with that, I'll give my introduction. So we are joined by Arwin, Sleeping Warrior, Spurs Chemo, and somebody who's got there. I think it's Mark Doxy. How you doing, gentlemen? Good to have you all here.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
All is good. All is good.
All is good. You there, Arwin?
Well, could be a little bit better though.
Could be a little bit better. God, you're a sad sack today again.
No, it's not that. Yeah, yesterday was a terrible day, but it's just crazy situation now with with Trump basically scoffing at his base, doing the strikes on Syria. That's just a stupid, crazy scenario there.
Well, I mean, what I've heard is that every time the flat Earth starts to get popular, there is a war.
Well, yeah, World War One, World War Two.
Yeah, we've had World War One when they were still put, and what happened is right up until the moon landings is when they had a good space of peace, a big spat of peace, you might just say. But now it's becoming popular again. We may just see another war.
Well, I wonder whether flat Earth was becoming popular with the Gulf War and the Second Gulf War. Because if it's true that there's a correlation with war and flat Earth, then there would have been an uprising in the 90s with the Gulf Wars, right?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, absolutely. If flat Earth, for example, gathers steam too quickly, too hastily, more than they can control the situation, then the best solution for those people would be to see a war outbreak.
Yeah, I'd agree completely, because that's what I think happened in World War One and Two. Because there's evidence about 1904 that
I mean, when did Robotham? When was he popularized? What year are we talking?
1890.
Okay, so if we're talking from the 1890s, if he's popularized that in the 1800s, then we could say that people were jumping on that bandwagon, saying, "Yep, it's a possibility." And then we had 20, 30, 40 years later, World War One, which in 1918, 1919. So any idea of a flat Earth would have just...
well, the flight had been developed, hasn't it? That was quite new, but it came to fruition. Yeah, is that the word I'm looking
guys,
for?
I think
Just
that drawing a conclusion that world wars or wars break out specifically because of flat Earth getting more popular might be a little bit into the direction of conspiracy theory.
Yep. Voice of reason, Arwin's correct. Correlation is not causation. Is that the real Arev? Say hello.
Is it?
I've kicked her, if it is. Kicked him.
Although, wars have many, legal benefits. So, as I suggested before, is that a official wartime scenario has legal implications that many people are not really aware of. So, what typically happens in a world war scenario is that many parties, including the ones in the shadows that we do not know about, tend to make their move because they can, because the legal structure has changed pretty drastically, enabling all sorts of weird tricks. So wartime, universal wartime, is usually the time that specific groups, inconveniences, political groups,
Hey, Nummy.
religions even can be rounded up. So
Know me?
I'm pretty
Yeah.
worried
Here's him.
in the sense
me?
that
Do we
you
have any
may be
guests?
correct there.
I was just making sure it was you because I didn't quite catch you, and Arwin just doesn't pay attention when someone joins.
Yeah, I got booted immediately yesterday, so
Well,
I tried to be quick
yeah.
on the draw.
Arif,
Of
if
course,
that
there's no
was-
connection between
that was you,
flat Earth
Arif, in
and
the chat,
war. But
I'm really
if
sorry.
you understand that there's a conspiracy, that flat Earth is a conspiracy, they're hiding something. And what would be the only way, the best way to get people, the flat earthers, off this topic? How could they stop us?
A massive
pushing this
diversion.
But that would be, then flat Earth would be a reason among many others to do it.
The
I don't
non-sequitur
think
conclusion.
I don't think they're going to go to war specifically just because of flat Earth.
No. I'm not
But it
saying
may be
specific.
the
No, I'm
drop
not saying
that makes the
specific, but I'm
bucket
saying
spill.
that would restrict travel, right? If there was a war, because we're talking about people traveling. People are saying, why aren't the flat earthers looking to, see the edge or something? So that will happen after
No, but
time.
$50 million a day.
They don't need a war to do that because we are already not allowed to get to the edge anyway. Now, it has
Passports
more to
didn't
do
exist
with
before the First World War.
the changing political landscape and
To Renee, thank you very much for the super chat. The Globe Earth Society defenders only regulate hypothetical astronomical assumptions. Research the HIV ITES. Thank you very much for the super chat.
Yes. Well, I'm just look, Arvin. We're trying to think here. Physics is in danger. Science is in danger. How are they going to prevent that from ceasing? Flat earthers are saying that the physics, the maths, the science, it doesn't work. It doesn't prove. It doesn't give what. So more and more people are coming to flat Earth. So how would you, let's say, if you were in control of this narrative, how would you, get rid of the likes of the flat earthers? Stops, yes.
I would bite some more time with certain distractions, and then in the meantime,
I delete all the
dedicate
YouTube
a great
channels.
portion of intelligence to try to figure out how to salvage the situation.
Well, thankfully, the flat earthers are spread out over the world, not easily.
Is that really
They won't
Ranty?
be.
No.
No,
But I think it's just part of this war narrative is just part of a huge overarching social engineering project that's been going on for centuries. And it's, the space program shows us that Russia and the United States have been in bed together this whole time. And, whatever the story that we're being presented with in the media
Oh,
is,
it's been removed. Sorry.
Could anyone kick that Jamie?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Just
I've done it.
getting Arwin back. Sorry about that, Arwin. Just wasn't quite
Aye.
quick enough.
yeah, they
Ran-
didn't
Ranty
like me
rejoined.
talking about
Yeah, Ranty rejoined at just an inappropriate moment.
that.
I see
Ranty,
two
did you snipe me?
Yeah, it wasn't Ranty.
No, I know.
Do some
Hey,
shoutouts.
Arwin, I've had complaints about you on the Masturbators chat.
Oh, really?
That really
Being
Arif
unnecessarily
won't
aggressive
be-
against fellow flat earthers, and you've been told to stop it. And I've said, just go and kill him. It's fine. So stop being so horrible.
Well,
lose
I could
anybody
say
when-
the same for the other party in this case.
No, clearly not.
I just don't like it when people that are supposed to be on my side are gonna accuse me of being a lunatic over a theory that I have.
Yeah, but there's something called tolerance as well, though, which does work both ways. I agree, but so what?
Yeah,
if people don't
but the
agree
thing
with it?
is, I don't call other people lunatics for no good reason when they are proposing a theory that is rather new.
Well, you have called me a backstabber.
That's what the ballers do.
You have called people
We're
dickheads.
supposed to be better than that. So I'm gonna call you out when you do that to me, if you're on my side.
Nathan, can you share my screen, please?
I can, yeah. Just pop it up
I'm
on
just-
the Hangout page, and I'll share it.
All right.
So people have called you a lunatic over your rectilinear looping model? Is that what you're
Of
talking
course.
about?
You're
But
on
mostly
screen.
ballers. But yeah, I don't take them that serious anyway because they're obviously stuck in their mindset. But
Nathan,
when
we need a
flat
diversion here,
earthers
don't we?
that are supposedly on my side are going to do it, then I will definitely call them out.
You're on, Mark. You're just displaying the hangout at the moment.
Okay.
Is there anyone else
There
who
you go.
subscribes to that idea besides yourself?
Newton's canon.
Yeah,
I
good.
think so. Free energy for one. He even made a very elaborate model based on the concept.
We'll change it to
There are others that are
3,700
entertaining the
meters per
concept
second.
as well.
Is that an original idea that you came up with, or is that something that you learned from someone else?
No.
So we'll change
Well,
it to maybe
I think that
4,700.
multiple people might have come onto the concept simultaneously, but in my case, it pretty much spontaneously arrived.
So how
You can
confident
see
are
it
you
by
that
the-
that is the correct model?
Well, there are many signs that it could be in opposition to the disk model.
So you're open to the possibility that maybe that's not the correct model.
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. I figured that. I wouldn't assume you were dogmatic about it. I'm just trying to get a handle because I don't know too much about that. I mean, what's the best evidence for the rectilinear looping model?
What's the best evidence?
Or what, the most compelling thing that, if you could only present one compelling, if you had to present your best compelling piece of evidence to somebody, what would it be?
Well, the very concept, there's not like many direct indications that it is like that over, say, the disk model, but there are hints that are completely unexplainable in any other type of model, and that is mainly the land beyond the North Pole, which is said to be a vast land that could never possibly fit in either the disk or on the globe in between there. That is one. That's just one element. And
So it's like an anecdotal report of land in that area, or is there a well-documented evidence of the supposed land?
no stories, old maps, religious writings go back very long time, that kind of thing. There's no real evidence, it's just stories. But that is one of the things that just cannot fit any other type of model at all. And there, even within those, like for example, what is the story again? The land beyond the North Pole, was it? That story about the Norwegian guy that went with his dad, that sailed off to the north, basically going into these new lands. And he even said in there that they basically re-entered the known Earth realms from the south, which is another indicator that at the time I didn't even recognize, didn't even understand it. It's another indicator of a looping system from north to south.
Sorry to interrupt you, Aaron. Just going to do another shout out to Rene. Sorry to get your name wrong last time. Let's test the globe. Earth Society Defender. 1. Show us the blue marble full of chemtrails. 2. Can you see beyond the vanishing point? Thank you for the super chat, Rene. Much obliged.
Well, I would say that to me that sounds pretty far out, but I'm not going to call anyone crazy.
It is pretty far out. It's thousands of miles out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure it has enough substantial evidence for me to really take it too seriously at this point, but with all due respect.
But it's just a start. There are other elements, just elements, and that need further confirmation, basically, to get certainty what is more likely to be the disk or a rectangular looping system. One of the big things is the equator a straight line, or is it indeed a circle? And this can be experimented with by basically doing a land measuring, like walking across a straight line, and see if basically the behavior of the globe of the heavens changes in relation to that movement of the straight line. So that
Well,
if it changes,
To a
then it would
telescope. I
indicate
get
that
that
it
the
is indeed
telescope's
not a
shape, but
straight line, but a
I think it's
circle.
the lens that's making.
it would be interesting to do a land survey across a lengthy stretch of the equator.
Absolutely. It is essential to begin
Yeah, no,
to prove or disprove
that's a
my
good
model.
idea, regardless of what model we're trying to prove or disprove.
Yep. And another concept would be the same for the Antarctic. That is, on the globe, it's supposedly an island. On the disk, it's supposedly an ice ring. But is it either? Is it really? There's one way to find out, and that is to go across all of it, following the ring, or the presumed ring, and then adding up all the angles, all of it, and
Well,
see,
I question
are you
whether
going
there's
to come
even
out with a
whether
minus
it's there.
360-degree angle, or a plus a 360-degree angle, or are you going to come out in a straight line?
Mhm. I question whether there's even an Antarctic landmass there, to be honest. Like, it's not. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't, but it seems like there's still a doubt as to, like, it seems that the tours and cruises and things that people participate in are generally out at the very outskirts, like the large peninsula that kind of licks out towards South America and some of the islands. One of the most famous of which is called Deception Island. Kind of ironic, but that it seems like it. Have you guys ever seen the channel Chippy the Chipmunk?
Yeah, I like Chippy the Chipmunks. He does blow a bit hot and cold. Big shout out to Aaron Moorfield for the super chat. Thank you very much. Much obliged.
Yeah, well, but he has some very interesting work that's just that sort of shows a lot of the telltale signs of fraud in terms of the claims of some of these nations having bases there or having research stations in Antarctica. Like he showed, I don't know. I mean, it's not. I guess it's not an absolute rock solid case, but he definitely showed it to be like NASA-ish in terms of inconsistencies and things like that. And I certainly doubt whether there is 5,000 full-time inhabitants on the Antarctic continent, as is claimed, doing research on non-existent climate change.
Yeah.
And but then it sort of leads, it seems pretty incredible that there could be a continent that's larger than the United States that is really, for the most part, totally unexplored in 2017. So it might not be there at all. It might just be that what people, what's thought of as Antarctica is actually just a few largish islands that, between 50 and 60 degrees south latitude or something like that. I mean, I'm not making any definite claims here. I just think that stands as a possibility.
Another shout out to Rene. Defenders of the Globe Earth Society have no idea they are worshipping a satanic religion. Axis of evil minus 90 degrees equals the mark of the beast. Thanks again. Big shout out to Rene.
Yeah, you know that if Flat Earth ever were to become official, that there's going to be the website of the Globe Earth Society.
Controlling
That's
the position.
basically going to be very laughably showing how the Earth is actually a globe. So
I quite like that. Defenders of the Globe Earth Society.
yeah.
Yeah, the tables could turn, right? There'll always be this tiny minority of people still, like, this argument will never end.
There'll still be ballers. 1,000 years from now, there'll still be ballers. Of course we live on a sphere, you morons.
Which is why it's so great that there's this archive of these debates, right? Like, that's something that we just don't have. It would be interesting to hear, if there had been some sort of public forums back in the time of Parallax, the guy who did the experiments in England in the 1800s, but it's just their books or whatever they were managed to publish. But now there's going to be this incredible history of this debate and how these things played out. But it may continue up to the point of flat Earth gaining mainstream acceptance and beyond, right?
I just want to put a shout out for Taboo Conspiracy. If nobody's actually subscribed to his channel, I suggest you go over there and subscribe right away. He's doing some fantastic research, especially his latest video, which was about the difficulties trying to go to Antarctica for everyday people that isn't in the military. Basically, it is pretty much impossible. First, it would cost you millions of dollars, and secondly, even then, that you're unlikely to get a permit to go. So, big thumbs up to him for the work he's doing.
Just for the
that was a good video. I agree.
Nami, just for the audience's benefit. So, Taboo Conspiracy will be Patricia Steer's guest today at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which I believe is around. Let me get it right.
PM.
10 p.m. Yeah, 10 p.m. British time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So Taboo Conspiracy on Flat Earth and other hot potatoes. Big shout out to Patricia Steer. You guys?
Yeah. So when they say that we can go and just take an image of the ice wall, no, we can't. We're not even allowed within 300 miles of the Antarctic coastline below 60 degrees. Is it
below 60 degrees? I think it's even further than 300 miles.
Could I just interrupt a sec while I've got Ali B saying, is it buffering for you lot? I have had people mentioning that they're getting buffering, Nath. I don't know if it's something to do with your settings, but other people aren't, not just Ali B, because I know he's got like the worst setup in the world, but there are other people that are reporting that buffering is happening.
Just lower the bandwidth, so lower the resolution, or if you're in the Hangout itself, like you guys, if you guys have buffering, then lower the little slider. I'll actually highlight it so the audience can see it. So there's a little slider for in the Hangout. But if you're watching the Hangout, it is broadcasted in high def, and most people will default to whatever the highest they can get, even if it's choppy. So the easy way around that is just to click the cog if you're a viewer and just lower the resolution, and that will solve the problem. In front of me, I can see how much is actually dropping. In other words, if it was a connection issue at my end or there was a YouTube issue, it would tell me, and it would mean that on the re-up, you would hear the same choppiness. But you won't, because I can see 0 dropped frames. So this, so far, is a perfect stream. But I do set it so that it is broadcasting in high resolution in case someone's showing something detailed, like a picture of the Isle of Man. So I try and keep it as high a resolution as I can with the absolute minimum needed to stream that. But just so that people who are unaware don't have to necessarily drop down the resolution. But if you're getting stuttering, just drop the resolution and that will solve the problem as a viewer.
Yeah, I just want to say, have you noticed how few ballers want to come in and challenge us anymore?
Yeah, they're all on protest.
Yeah, but I mean, if you remember originally, there was 10 ballers in the chat, and you had to go on Skype to battle the 10 of them. And eventually it was like one by one, they've been dropping off because they've been systematically destroyed on every point that they've brought to the table.
Yeah, because it turns out that preponderance of evidence and the whole body of science turned out not to be that much after all.
Yeah, when you break it down, I mean, all they had was words up till then. And it was until you actually start breaking down those words and saying, okay, well, let's have a look at this, shall we? Let's look at the scientific proof. Well, hang about, wait a minute, there isn't any. You realize that they have nothing.
I'm going to do another shout out to Rene Ibaluesa. You've done 3 super chats, so I'm going to try. I hope I haven't butchered your surname. So big shout out to Rene. Happy Flatter Day. Bombarding children's websites with flat Earth reality research. Be happier. Become a globortionist. Love it. Big shout out to Rene.
We're also learning how to argue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the thing.
For evidence.
Well, no, just become more knowledgeable about our own beliefs. I mean, we were put to the test originally, if you remember. We had to research the comebacks and we had to research the answers to what they were challenging us, because up until then, they hadn't had anybody basically challenge them. So they were allowed to come in and just laugh at us constantly until after each individual argument. I mean, this is why some people get bored with the show. It's because you might spend a full week arguing about one point. But at the end of that week, we know how to debate that point, so that point can never be brought up again. And if it is, we've got the instant answer for it. So it takes a week to get it, but we do get it at the end. And then we've got it, we nailed it down. So whenever to bring that point up again, we've got the answer for that.
Yeah, that scientific method, bit of a bitch in it.
But I'm just saying, let's suppose, how long's the show been going now? Is it 5 months? So if let's suppose we've learned 5 things in 5 months, right? But it's 5 arguments that we've taken away from the ballers that we've been able to come back, and now we can hold our own with anybody about a debate on that particular subject. Up until then, without them coming in and debating us, we weren't able to get to this point.
Is there any evidence of anybody shifting their opinion?
Yeah, there is actually.
Oh, good.
I don't want to name names because I think he's on the brinks of like possibly joining our side. But there are people on the ball camp that are asking questions that would only be asking if they were curious as to how they could jump ships, kind of thing. There's more than one. There's like 3 people that I speak to regularly that do ask leading questions, that they are questioning stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there is. Publicly,
have you changed your opinion on anything over the past year?
Who, me?
Yeah. Oh, any of us?
Yeah, the preponderance of evidence in favor of science is lacking. I thought there was loads of it. Turns out there's not that much of it, and that which we get told is good turns out to be refutable in any event. So, yeah, the perception of science by me has been reduced significantly.
I saw the moon modelled in an alternative way. So ever since I found out the Earth was flat, I was still happy to declare that the moon is a sphere, and that's the only way it can be, having looked at it a lot through my telescope. And Chris Monk showed me it modelled in a completely different way, as a Smarty, I kid you not, as button moon. And it showed it working, and my jaw was on the floor. And I was stuttering over my words and going, I can't quite believe I'm going to say that, but there is a potential possibility that the moon could be a bloody Smarty. And I couldn't, I'll say it now because I have reached the point of acceptance where I'm happy to say those words. I've seen it modelled. I'm not saying it is a Smarty. I'm just saying I've seen an alternative model. And you go, bloody hell, nothing ceases to amaze me. There's never a dull day on flat Earth.
No, there's not. There's not. And where we are at the moment, and then projecting ourselves a year later, will we have changed any of our positions?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I know where my journey's taken me in the past year. I have something to ask actually, because it's something that D Marble put out. It was about the moon and the moon landings. You talk about the ever-expanding universe. I mean, this is their model that the universe is expanding, and obviously Earth and the moon and everything else, the sun, is all traveling through space at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. So is space traveling at the same speed as the Earth and the moon? Because if it's not, then how were they able to send a rocket to the moon? Because once they leave Earth's orbit and they get into that vacuum of space, if space isn't traveling at the same speed as the Earth, then the rocket would just be lost. It would never get there.
You mean like is space expanding at the same rate as?
Yeah.
You found
well, I think that the way that cosmological theory is explained is that it's expanding like at each given point equally. So it's not like expanding directionally. Like it's like there's just some probability that any given point in space is going to acquire another space point. It doesn't make any sense actually. It's just ridiculous. But so I don't actually think that would be a problem for their model because it's not really expanding in a direction. It's expanding as a what there's a word for this, a scalar quantity. It's just the scale of it. It's the amount of space is increasing as a function of however much space there already is in a scalar way. It's not like expanding at the edges or expanding in one particular direction or another, according to that model of cosmology, which I became fairly familiar with back when I was brainwashed.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that if the moon and the Earth are traveling through space,
yeah,
at let's say 10,000 miles an hour, just give it an easy example. 10,000 miles an hour, it's traveling through space. The rocket leaves Earth traveling at 1,000 miles an hour, right? So it aims for the moon, right? But then the moon is traveling 10 times faster than that in a different direction.
Well, I guess that they would probably say that you would just maintain the velocity of that direction that you had when you left the Earth or whatever. I mean, whether or not that would actually whether or not that's really plausible is kind of.
Well, essentially, it's like throwing a stone, right? It's like throwing a stone at a car, right? If a car's going to travel, you're going to throw the stone at the car. When it leaves your hand, that's the direction it's going in. But by the time it's got to where it should be, the car's already 10 meters down the road.
Well, that's why the technique of clay pigeon shooting is that you shoot in front of your target.
Yeah, but the speeds we're talking about, I mean, it would be impossible that we don't have a rocket that could keep up with the velocity of the Earth and the moon.
You could work it out though.
No, but it's like it would be a different problem if you were trying to throw a rock at a moving car from another moving car, right? Like say you're driving in a car that's parallel to another moving car. If you throw the rock is going to acquire the velocity of the car that you threw it from as well. Like it's going to have that forward direction already. So it wouldn't be like trying to hit a moving car standing still on the road.
Yeah, but that's assuming that. But then then the rocket would have to be traveling at the same speed as the Earth is traveling through space.
Well, presumably it is when it takes off, right? Like it's sitting on the Earth, traveling with the Earth, then it takes off, and it would still have that velocity when it left the Earth. I mean, I just feel like it's ridiculous to almost talk about it because the whole thing is anyway, but like, I don't know if that would actually be like the ultimate way of debunking that because I'm
not saying it's an ultimate way to debunk it. I'm just asking, is it even possible?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that you are saying that. I'm just saying that I think that you could make an argument that it's possible. Like it seems plausible.
Of course it's possible, Ranty. You remember the LEM when it left the moon to join the mothership again? It blasted off and somehow managed to dock with it.
I want to know who filmed the LEM lifting up off the moon's surface, and because
it's a farce.
Because somebody had to be there tilting the camera.
Well, they said that they did it by controlling it from the surface of the Earth at NASA, right? But then there would have been this time delay, so it doesn't make sense.
There's two things to watch. There's two things to watch in that video. It not only focused in at the LEM as it blasted off, it went wide angle and then it went up to follow it. So it wide angle and then pan.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? Just completely ridiculous.
And it was able to.
How anyone can believe that is just totally beyond me.
Yeah.
I'm going to read out a few more super chats. So, Renee again, our favourite super chatter today. The globe joke is dead. Be smarter and jump off. And then there's a couple more. Sorry to keep you.
What's interesting about that too, though, is that it's like I've thought like, what became of that camera, right? Like, so I guess it just had a battery that died or something. But it's like they just show you that shot, and then that's the end of the broadcast. But presumably the camera lasted a bit longer than after it was necessary to take that shot. So why didn't they just start panning it around, like look at the Earth or something, right? Like if they had a remote control, if they had something that sophisticated, why not just squeeze every last drop out of it, get every last bit of, they could have just started, they could have just done like a spiral and just showed the whole panorama. Or at least something, right? Like they would have, why wouldn't they have just, taken that footage and for their archives or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, Voyager still sends stuff back, doesn't it?
Sorry, what that?
Voyager still sends stuff back.
Right, Voyager, yeah. And now that's like, it's supposed to be what, like 37 billion miles or something? It's like, what kind, and it's powered by solar energy, even though the sun would be like, the size of a normal star at that distance. Like, where is it getting the energy to create a radio signal that can travel 37 billion miles?
It was analog radio as well.
It's just that stuff is really absurd. Like, it's amazing that people.
Do any of
Well,
you
I
guys
guess-
watch?
The-
Do any of you guys?
1080p
Sorry,
though.
Ranty. I was just going to say, do any of you guys watch John LeBon?
Yeah, a little bit.
He basically says that this stuff is not done in a really sophisticated way to trick you in a really, you know, in a almost subliminal way. It's done in a crappy way. In other words, the deception is obvious if you've got eyes to see. And in the case of what you're discussing now, so you're talking about the actual takeoff from the moon to return home, and it's filmed from Earth by remote control with about a 2.5 second delay, controlling the camera as they launch off the moon's surface. Right? Well, it's not. It's on a set with a backdrop and it's on string. That much is obvious to anybody who just looks at it with the slightest bit of discernment. It's not a good a piece of cinematography in the slightest. It's crap, in fact.
Yeah.
You know, just go, if
It
you
looks
don't
like
know what we're talking about,
1950s
just Google
style
search it.
sci-fi, like majorly. It looks like rocket, like films particularly from the 1950s era of science fiction.
Remember when Jaron asked people to submit 10 or 15-second clips, and he would string them all together? Well, that was good 3 years ago now, maybe a little bit less, but he said, send in your clip and I'll string it together with just a, like I say, 10, 15 second what your thoughts on flat Earth are. Mine was to put exactly what you're describing on the screen and me standing in front of it saying, we've never been to the moon, we couldn't go then and we can't go now. And then at the end of me saying that takes off behind me. And it just looks a joke. You know, it is just a load of cardboard and it's somebody's built it, you know, and then it's been pulled up with string. It's just it's a joke.
Yeah.
Did you notice
so maybe
that,
you know, like along the lines of what John LeBon is saying, it's that they keep these standards very low so that they don't have to, you know, they don't want to set the bar too high for themselves. So people just, I think that seems like what they do with NASA in terms of at least presenting it to the brainwashed masses, is that they don't, you know, we're all used to just, it's like crappier than you'd think it's supposed to look or something. It's like the lunar lander as well, right? It's like, it doesn't look like some sophisticated piece of engineering like you'd expect. But, you know, they just do that so that they don't have to work too hard in the future, because they know they're going to have to maintain a kind of continuity of their production values over decades.
Well, Sark's Cool in the chat has just asked, is it a flat Earth debate or a moon Earth debate? Sorry, a flat moon debate. And I think it's combined ultimately, because you guys are always saying we need to look up to get to judge what the Earth is like. You know, we have to look up to know what the Earth looks like. So we are looking up and we're taking umbrance with the fact that the moon landings never happened.
Well, it's a pretty important question, because if the moon landings were real, then they would provide pretty good evidence that we live on a globe, right?
Yeah, essentially.
The picture of the Earth, like if we have, you know, if we knew that really happened, then then they have pictures of the Earth and it's a globe. So to discuss the plausibility of that claim is and it also is just, if they're willing to lie about that, it says a lot about the kind of scale of deception that we're dealing with as you know, that the human race is dealing with. Because I think that's what prevents a lot of people from opening their minds, is that, you know, a lot of people will just argue that a deception on that scale is simply unthinkable, that it just involves too many people and blah blah blah, and it would just get leaked and they, you know, that's ultimately, you know, actually from personally talking to a lot of people, like it seems like that's just where it ends for people, for a lot of common folk, is that they simply cannot, it's simply unthinkable to them that many people could be lying for that long about something that large.
Well, when we handle NASA, that's a gateway to opening your mind to other possibilities.
Yeah. Well, I thought the moon landing was fake for like 20 years almost before I,
Hi,
you know.
I'm Nathan Oakley, and this is... Sorry. Finding a video
Before I
that
considered
can show
the
that
possibility of flat Earth. Like, I mean, even, like, I was just reflecting that, you know, I've only been I've been a flat earther for only a little more than a year, I guess, like maybe a year and 3 months or something. It seems like forever now, but I, you know, even 2 years ago, I thought it was absolutely just retarded. And I thought it was, you know, what people say, like it was meant to distract people from looking into NASA, and it was a psyop and all that stuff. So I mean, just kind of amazing.
Well, if you're looking now at Nathan, he's showing this moon buggy on the moon.
This is
right?
it. This is it. That's the takeoff
Now,
we're talking about.
the thing is,
Will you start again, please, Nathan?
Yeah, it'll come. I'll play it again. But this is like a video I made maybe 2 years ago, and I think the title was something like "How did NASA fool our parents?" And the general gist of what I'm saying in this particular video is that it's a bit of a laugh. You know, it looks terrible, but B, they didn't have what I have now, which is an 8-foot screen and a projector. You know, they had it on a 17-inch black and white CRT, if at best. So they weren't able to pause it for a start. They weren't able to do what I've done now on screen and just pause it and have a look at what's actually being shown and pick it apart, you know, in slow motion. They didn't have that back then. So it was much easier to fool them. Now we have great access to this material. We can just go through it at our leisure and look at how terrible it is, which is exactly what everybody does. But yeah, I'll just skip through to the bit where they do the takeoff again, just because that's what we're actually talking about.
How did they actually get a moon buggy on the moon? Was it 2 moon buggies? Did it have 2 there? I mean, it's preposterous. The weight of them would be equivalent to the same as 3 or 4 astronauts.
Did you not see the trailer on the back of the LEM, though?
Yeah, they towed it up, Nancy. Don't be ridiculous.
How did the tires work?
They Bluetoothed the imagery back up once they left. It was fine.
Yeah, but wouldn't the tires have exploded on the moon buggies?
No, they had metal tires.
Oh, they had metal. Right. So, wait a minute. They had metal tires, so it had to be completely metal throughout. You couldn't have any oxygen on the inside. Yeah.
Yeah, they were not inflatable at all. They're like, it's like basically just the shape of a tire made out of like a metal mesh. They did think of that. That's what I'm saying. Like, you know.
So the weight of that would then it's increased even further now. What's the equivalent of maybe 5 astronauts? Those rockets, right, were at full capacity to try and take that payload up. That's what we were told, and yet they were able to take up one of these buggies that probably weighed the equivalent of a tank.
Well, I think that what they claim is that the buggy actually was lightweight. It was made out of aluminum because it didn't have to bear as much weight in the low gravity atmosphere. So it only weighed something like 1,500 pounds or something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me on those numbers, but that's basically what their excuses are for that. And I'm not trying to make excuses for NASA. I'm just saying that they do, you know, they did make some effort to cover their ass on certain points of, you know.
I need to ask Mummy a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chance you could change that ugly as hell face, that picture thing that you have, that mole thing? It's the most grotesque looking thing that I have, and every time you speak, I have to look at it and I think, ew.
Okay, well,
I find it offensive. Can we have something like fluffy pandas or something?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, maybe I'll change it just for you, Anthony, but I'm not going to do it right at this moment.
Right, nummy. Right, why would they need to take 2 rovers up then?
Well, they only took 1 per given mission, right?
What, and they didn't
take up 2 for 1 mission, like because they landed there 6 times. That's the story, right? And then they didn't bring one on. I don't remember when they started bringing. I think it wasn't until Apollo 15.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, why would they need to have 2 up there?
Because they landed in a different spot, and then they wanted to like drive around the area that they were in.
He's got a frisbee.
No, that wasn't the real one.
So like they weren't like, you know, they went up there, they landed in one spot, used their rover, then on a subsequent mission, they landed at a different spot. They wouldn't have had access to that first rover because it wasn't the landing site wasn't close to the previous.
What did they do in the rover? Nothing. They didn't go anywhere in the rover. It's not like they went and they went 6 miles somewhere. There was no point.
No, it's just they were just cruising. They were just driving around, you know, being
pimping it.
They're pimping, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it was just to create. They're like, what are we gonna do next time? Like, we got to think of something. Like, we got to make more photo ops here. You know, it's like, what are the guys just get out and walk around?
Total waste of resources to take a moon buggy up. If they were only going to just go driving around within a 100-meter radius of the LEM. That was it, All they were going to do was that. What was the point in doing it?
No, I think they went further than that. Like they did claim that it allowed them. Like I think they went as far as like 5 or 10 kilometers with the rover, if I remember right. So it allowed them to like explore a little further from the landing site.
What was the James Bond film that took the mickey out of this? Was it Diamonds Are Forever?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it was Moonraker when he jumped
Moonraker, right? Yeah, and they break into the studio, and then he steals the rover and drives away.
That had nothing to do with the plot of the film.
No, it didn't. He's being chased by somebody, isn't he?
It's just because it's the same people, right? It's the same people, probably. You know, it's the same people who produce Hollywood films that are producing the NASA stuff. It's this whole military-industrial complex, the illusion of the separation of media and state.
Yeah.
And
right, guys, I have to go. I have to disappear, so I'm going to leave you to it.
Thanks, Renty.
Okay. Well, good talking to you.
Have any of you guys investigated or researched the Sputnik conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, it's a hoax, and that it was, my take on it is that, one of the first arguments that people will make about the moon landing conspiracy is that the Russians would have, that the Russians and the United States were in a kind of Cold War, were in a period, had a lot of tension and hostility towards each other, and that they wouldn't have allowed each other to get away with anything in terms of deception, right?
My thoughts on it are that Newton, 300 years earlier, said that if you get a body flying, if you project a cannon ball around fast enough, it would go into orbit. Now, that was theoretical for 300 years, and then in 1957, the Russians did it. But nobody said, Newton got it right. They all
No,
said,
I think that they did. I mean, Newton came up with the theory of orbits.
Can you find any reference to people saying Newton got it right?
I don't have it. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think that Newton was already completely supposed to be right about that.
Yes, he
right?
was
Like, I don't think there was any doubt in people's minds that you could, at that point, like at least in the sort of mainstream scientific physics narrative, that that Newton's equations had already gained a rather total kind of acceptance. So it wouldn't have been surprising. It wasn't like, oh, Newton was right. Like the whole thing was premised on the assumption that Newton was right. Like they couldn't have launched the thing if Newton wasn't right. So,
and there was a few science fiction films and books prior to that set up the people's thoughts that you could go into orbit with a satellite, and then the Russians apparently did it. And the people who benefited from that was the arms industrialists of America. They became very wealthy because of it. The whole thing was a hoax, but I was trying to find the expression Newton was right, and yet it was just.
I don't think, like I say, I don't think you're going to find that, because all of the development of all that technology is built on the presupposition that Newton is right. Like that, even the square one wouldn't have worked. Like they wouldn't have even been able to launch the thing if Newton wasn't already right. Right. Yeah. And that, and also that the whole heliocentric model was already viewed as a validation of Newton, like the moon's orbit and things like that. Like, because he basically built off of, Kepler's orbital model or whatever, and then just injected this concept of gravity. But also, Newton's first law, like the law of inertia, all that stuff. I mean, all that, combine those concepts, and you would have the possibility of orbital mechanics on some level. I mean, although it's what's amazing is that they set the groundwork for these fictions so long ago.
Well, it's interesting that it was theory, but it was accepted as truth, even though nobody had repeated it.
I think there's very little competition, you know, like, and when you look at Newton's total body of work, I mean, it's a mixed bag of a lot of really useful and good ideas and a lot of spurious and theoretical concepts as well. And also, I don't know, Newton also was willing to acknowledge which parts of his ideas were purely theoretical. So he kind of it's hard to, he doesn't really look bad in the end. But I mean, I'm just saying
still
that
had
people
some
didn't.
ethics.
Pardon?
He still had some ethics in him. He wasn't. He wasn't a priest, basically. I
Mhm.
sometimes wonder if he really even believed in the globe. They didn't just graft that onto him.
Yeah,
He
it's
wrote.
impossible to know. I mean, it's hard to say if Newton. It's hard to be sure that Newton was even a real person. You know, that he may have been a kind of mythic, or a sort of like mythical hero entity that they used to kind of consolidate a whole bunch of separate bodies of work in order to, they just create these sort of
Like
triumphant
Aristophanes.
heroes of science. Yeah, like Aristophanes, exactly. I mean, it could be. I'm not saying that that's the case, but it very well could be. We would have no way of knowing. I mean, he was, interestingly, his biography is told that he wrote all of his major work on physics, optics, mathematics before the age of 30,
Yeah,
which is very
that's right.
young, and became a recluse and did nothing but work on like Gnostic Christian alchemy.
He wrote
And
more about
but
religion
also,
than he did
Yeah,
about
fascinating.
science.
yeah, and also he
It's
loathed
not surprising,
all
by the way, at
interaction with
all,
people.
because
So nobody,
if
he
he did,
wasn't around, right? Like he was hiding out in his house by himself. Like it specific, his biographies will specifically say like he loathed all human contact. So he was, they kind, it's kind of written in such a way that it wouldn't be surprising that he didn't tend to appear a lot in, say, other people's biographies.
He
Or
was a manic depressive.
that's not really surprising to me at all, because if he was basically a very good physical scientist and theorist, and he came up with these theories, and the elite would then recognize him and tell him, look, we can assimilate your theory into our larger globe concept, and he would have been informed about the larger conspiracy reaching into the future, basically, then yeah, that would make you a recluse, and that would definitely make you try to look into alchemy after that point, because that
yeah,
would
well,
be
I guess it
damn
works that
shocking.
way too. I mean,
Something like
the
that
point
happened
is,
to
the
you.
thing is, we'll never know, right?
Just
But
saying.
it took smart men
Doesn't
like
surprise me at
Newton
all
to
that the
work out
sudden abrupt
alchemy was
change
impossible.
in his character.
There wasn't an abrupt change really in his character.
You just
He
described. He basically worked on his physics up to his 30s, and then he became very isolated.
No, he was isolated the whole time.
Oh,
Like
really?
he never liked people. But I'm just saying that all the work that is, all of Newton, what's considered to be Newton's important work, was done by the age of 30. But his personality didn't really change at that point. It's just that
Okay. I misunderstood.
Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. Maybe I didn't. I think it's probably I didn't explain it very well in the first place. But I'm just
He lived in
clarifying
fear
on
of
that.
his theological opinions as well, in that he was a Unitarian, and Unitarians were executed at the time for rejecting the Trinity.
Sorry, can you speak a little louder?
Sorry. He was a Unitarian, and Unitarians were executed for heresy at the time. So he also kept his religious beliefs subdued until after his death. It was published on what he believed from his interpretation of the scriptures.
Yeah.
Well, that would be
He
a
wrote
good
some
reason
book
to become recluse.
about the book of Revelation, I think, or something like and he wrote some like corrections to like translation. Actually, I can't remember. I don't know. He did some wrote some like theological apologetics type stuff as well.
He did more of that than science, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, he like conquered science. You know, he had that all in his back pocket by the age of 30, and then he moved on to be a religious kook.
Mad. If you're a theologist, if you actually study this stuff, the philosophy of it, that doesn't make you a religious kook.
No, I'm just kidding around. But he was a kind of a kook in that.
You could be a theologian and not believe in God. Just the
That
study
could
of
be.
God.
Well, he
But-
definitely believed in God.
He did, yes, he did.
Yeah, that's not kooky at all. It's another
Well, I
discussion
wasn't
type,
meaning
of course.
that's
But
not what I was referring to in terms of that. I mean, it's just that like a guy who's like a complete recluse has no, basically loathes all human contact and just obsessively picks over the minutia of, you know, theological. It picks over theological minutia until his death. I mean, I wasn't necessarily meaning it in all seriousness, but such a person might be fairly described as being a kook.
Yeah, there's a thin
or
line.
maybe
between
he
being
was
a
disappointed
genius.
in humans, and he just focused on his relation with God.
Yeah, maybe you're seeing
Like-
a little
like
bit of
what
yourself
nuns
in
do.
him, right? That's okay. I'm not. Don't take it to heart. I'm just.
I
just
do.
saying-
I do take it.
Yeah. Okay. You're very.
I-
yes, okay. So
I
I'm
will
sorry,
defend
Arwen.
him.
You're
I will
right.
defend
I
him.
take it back. Newton was not necessarily a kook.
Thank you.
What primary sources do we have for Newton? He definitely was a real person, right?
No,
What, he's
I don't think that
fictitious.
we can know with certainty that he was a real person. I mean, he may or may not have been a real person.
So what primary sources do we have for him?
Aren't there like paintings, portraits of him?
Yeah.
Well, Trinity
doesn't
College
give you-
has
If
got
they
records
are
of him being there.
fairly detailed and similar, there's more than one, let's just say, that's a pretty good indicator that it was actually a person.
Trinity
Well,
College
not
in
necessarily.
Oxford. Trinity College in Oxford would have records of him being there.
Yeah,
That as
but
well, yes,
all of that,
definitely.
you know, these people, all these institutions, like he was also the president of the Royal Society, and these
He was.
institutions are implicated in so much fraud on such a
Okay.
massive scale that, and they're not they're the kind of people that would go to all the trouble to create all that backstory and details to create the impression of these people being real people when they're not. I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the controversy surrounding the Shakespearean authorship,
Yeah.
but it's been shown that, you know, it's widely believed that Francis Bacon was the true author of the Shakespeare plays, and a lot of the people who have studied that topic have have pointed out a likeness between their portraits, right? And I also just found that when I looked at Newton's portrait, that he seems to look a lot like Leibniz, who was his like arch rival. So it
He
seems
also
like
looks
there's
like John Locke's portraits as
Yeah.
well.
So it seems like that actually it was it may have been that the Secret Service of the Crown at the time used this, you know, use certain people as, you know,
Actors.
would have like a model that would do portraits for there was maybe a real person it was referring to who was kind of like the actor who played Newton on the occasions that he might need to appear somewhere, but this was in fact a kind of common strategy that they would employ in terms of creating fictional biographies for important historical figures and things like that. So I'm not saying that Newton was definitely not a real person, but I wouldn't put it past them. So, you know, in terms of what we have as painted portraits and records of his being at certain places in the past or whatever, I don't see that as absolute rock solid evidence that he was a real person.
I mean, neither.
Okay, technically true, but look, there's great indication that in the far history, and that is even contested if that even existed at this point, there are clear proofs or evidence, let's just say, that there have been characters historically falsified, have been falsely created to support a narrative, but is there any proof of the more recent history, say the Renaissance era, where there have also been people created, placed into the history that never existed? Is there proof of this?
Well, it's one of these things that's very
If some
difficult
other
to
people
prove.
have been falsely created, then yeah, it would become a more likely possibility that, well, for example, Newton could have been one of these people.
Before you answer that question, I'm going to do a very quick link. So I hope you're all enjoying the debate thus far. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support this channel, as many have, and Renee has done once more, be sure to hit the super chat, which runs alongside each of these shows while it's live, and there's a link also in the info box once the video has rendered. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Thanks a million to all who have done so already. Sharing the show increases the live audience, of course, and this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. As I say, there is approximately 1 hour left on this live stream.
Yeah, I am. So, just before Nummy starts up again, because nobody, I can't get a word in.
Hey, there was a question.
I'm enjoying listening to Nummy, actually.
First.
I'm really enjoying it.
I've got a question for you, Anthony.
I agree with most of what Nummy said so far. I've got to be honest. There you go, Nummy. Hope that
I agree with what he says. I just want to try and get a word in.
Go on,
okay.
Anthony.
Hey, listen. If I'm talking too much, just let. I didn't realize that you wanted to get a word in. So
yeah.
It's technically your fault, Anthony.
Go on. What's your question, Mark?
Anthony, gravity. I separate gravity into two things. The bogus one is orbital mechanics. You know, where
gravitational pull.
Yeah, where something can orbit another mass and never fall into the mass. I reject that as I just reject it. But the other thing is the force downwards. Where I sit or where I stand on the Earth, I do feel a force going downwards. I'm not too sure what your position is on that. Is there a downward force other than
no
buoyancy? No.
Me and Nathan have this as a major disagreement. Let me come back to this in 2 seconds. I want to ask a question that Alex has said in chat. He says, I've noticed that very few flat Earth people seem to own a telescope. Well, I know Nathan's got a telescope and I've got a telescope. Mark, do you have a telescope?
No, but I've asked for one for my birthday.
All right. So Santa will bring you one. We know he's real.
Nummy, have you got telescopes?
No, I do not own a telescope.
And Arwin, have you got one?
Nope.
So there's two on the panel that have telescopes. I don't know where he gets very few people from, but I've noticed that very few ball earthers seem to have any evidence
to support Earth curvature.
Yeah, axial rotation, gravity. Right, back to the gravity issue. I just wanted to address it because I thought it was a first statement that I wanted to respond. Where were we, Mark? Remind me.
There's two aspects to gravity. One is going in an orbit around a planet. I reject that. I understand that that is just fiction. But the force that keeps me on terra firma, I feel it. There is a downward force.
Newtonian.
What?
Yeah. So what
there is a down.
What's the question? Is there a down?
Yeah.
Yeah. The answer is no.
Okay. Can you
Philip, how are you doing? Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can. Nice and clear.
Fantastic.
Good to have you.
How can you there's no down? I don't. I don't understand that. There's when you drop, objects seem to fall in a consistent direction.
Yeah. It's because right. So the word down is a label that we give to the direction that we perceive things going. If we don't see it as the label that we give it, and we see it as a state of density in terms of the relative state that that object is in, then down doesn't become down anymore. It becomes a state of less buoyance than what it should be in if you let go of it, because it'll try to get to the point where it will be it's called equilibrium.
But why that direction is the question.
It's not a direction, it's a state. We call it a direction because we call it down. But
so before you go, sorry to interrupt you guys, Philip's about to show us a Smarter Everyday video, which I can't play, unfortunately. I will get a copyright strike for playing it, but
you will?
I will, but I'll explain what's happening.
Sorry.
Hold on, we've got Imran. How you doing, Imran? Can you hear us? Hello? Okay, bye-bye. So I'll explain what the experiment does, basically. So he has, correct me if I'm wrong at the end, Philip. It's been a couple of years since I've watched it. So he has a car, big minivan, plenty of space in it, and he has two different types of balloons in the car. The first one is filled with helium. The second one is filled with a different gas. It might even be air. And what you have as the car accelerates with the helium balloon is actually pushed forward on account of the fact that the air is forced back as the car accelerates, and the adverse happens when it's filled with a heavier gas. So it's forced backwards. So it's the counter of what you may think in a car. You'd think as you accelerate, the balloon would be forced back. It's not. It's the air that's forced back, not the balloon. Therefore, the balloon is forced forwards. It's the opposite of what you would think.
That's only during the acceleration.
So basically, the point of this is to say that the buoyant force and the direction of where the more dense air goes is directly affected by the force which is applied on it. So in the frame of the car, there's a centrifugal force if you're turning left or right, which is pushing the air outward, right? And it's effectively changing the direction of up.
Philip, you've just come into the conversation, and I would welcome your comments. But can I just go back a bit to what I was saying to Anthony? Are you still there, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm listening.
I'm going by what I feel and what my personal experience is, that if you were standing next to me and you pushed me or headbutted me or thumped me, I would feel your force. And there'd be no question about that, no debate. But I feel a force of downwards sticking me to the earth.
Right, let's describe the word force. Is it a force? When you say you feel a force, are you feeling something pushing on you from above, or are you feeling your own mass pulling against you because you are heavier than the environment in which you were in?
Well, I'm going to go to Newton's his first law, that something will stay stationary unless acted on by an external force. Is that this first? I think that was his first law of motion.
Yeah, that's the first law.
And I don't think that is debatable. Something will stay still until something else pushes it. Now, if I try and jump up in the air, I don't stay there. I come back down again. Now, there is a relationship between the force downwards and buoyancy. The two work together, but it's not just buoyancy on its own. There's something that holds me to the ground.
Something that can't be proven.
Right. Yeah, the gravity constant. It is again, it is part of the formula of buoyancy and density. So
we don't know. We don't know what
the cause is, right?
Gentlemen, don't call it gravity, because gravity is a massive subject. I'm just talking about a downward force that keeps me on terra firma.
It's not a force.
The fact that we don't know what the cause is doesn't mean that there's no proof. We have the proof that of the effect, just not the cause.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, right. That's a perfectly fine position.
Right, so in that case, then,
there's a
let
distinction
me flip it
between
back.
gravity and
If I share my screen,
I think
why was it that
gravity
you couldn't share
originally was
that
a
last
word,
video? Is it
and then
specifically
later,
that last video?
Gravitational pull was
Smarter Everyday
basically
or
grafted on
anything
it.
from Discovery. Sorry, Arwin, to talk over you. So I just know from experience that certain videographers on YouTube will strike you automatically. They've just got the software in place to do it without them doing a damn thing. So it just happens with certain
the video
Discovery.
that I'm showing is by Real Tease Fishing. It's
really?
not Smarter Every Day. Yeah.
Oh right. I haven't got his permission anyway, but we've detailed it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I think
but it's
you
still
did a good
covered
job
by
of
fair use,
describing
though,
it.
right?
Well, in any event, we've detailed it, and it is a very, very good example. I've got to agree with Philip. The only thing that I've not seen, and it might be the case in that video, Philip, you can tell me if this is the case, because certainly Destin, or whatever his name is pronounced, didn't do this. he didn't show the equilibrium being reached. So obviously, to a certain extent, you're still going to feel the forces that you described, turning left,
Right.
turning right. But once you stop accelerating, and if you can reach constant motion, this is completely contrary to what I argued with Rumpus the other day, so I'm now putting the shoe on the other foot before people criticise me in the comments and give me shit.
Right. So I like this video because it doesn't use acceleration forwards or like braking to show this. It actually the guy actually goes in a roundabout. So he actually is turning at a constant rate, which means that you can actually see the balloon kind of reach an equilibrium because the guy is going at a very constant speed in a circle.
Could
so
I
he's
just
really
ask
like
the video
like centrifugal. Huh?
Could I just ask what you think the video, what point the video is proving?
So what I think the video proves is that we can basically apply an extra force on the gas, which changes the direction of the buoyant force acting on the balloon, which means that the buoyant force is not actually caused by just a natural tendency in the vertical direction, but it's actually caused by a force in the vertical direction, generally speaking.
Yeah, but
Yes,
you're not going to be
perfect,
changing the
perfect.
direction.
That
You're
is
going to be adding to. So if you were to let the tether go that's holding the balloon in place whilst you go around one of the bends, it wouldn't go in a straight line around the bend. It would go in a diagonal because there is this secondary force.
Right.
So you're not changing the direction of the buoyancy. You're just adding to it.
But there's momentum in the car.
But
There's
the
energy
forces
being
are
added
combined.
to the scenario.
Well, the point is that there's actually a microscopic description of buoyancy based on the fact that the gas is actually made out of molecules, and the gravitational force. Well, okay, the force pulling down on these molecules is forcing the amount of pressure to be higher at lower density or at lower altitudes, and then it goes down. So that means the pressure below the balloon is actually higher than the pressure above. And so it's because of you have more pressure on the bottom than on the top, that actually forces the balloon upward.
So are you arguing this is an argument in favor of gravity then?
I'm saying this is an argument that the only way you can get a buoyant force is if you apply a net downward force on the liquid or fluid that the object is
ridiculous.
submerged in.
That isn't
no,
okay.
it's
Right,
not.
okay. If
That's
that's
correct.
true,
Well, no, it's a fine explanation,
No,
but
it's a good argument.
it's a
okay?
good argument.
No,
but in
if
our
that's true,
atmosphere,
can you
Philip-
respond to this video then, Nate? Would you mind sharing my screen, sir?
Okay, fair enough.
So centrifugal force is the byproduct, the consequence, the effect of the Earth spinning, correct?
I'm not talking about the centrifugal force of the Earth. I'm just talking about if I have a gas in a box.
I'm going to deal
Doesn't
with gas
matter.
in a box.
Okay.
Just bear with me for a minute. With regards to gravity, and this also overlaps with the rotation of the Earth, the gas in a box point I'm going to address specifically now. So stay with me.
I'm not really talking about rotation of the Earth, just to clarify.
Right.
I'm just talking about how does the gas respond when you apply a force to it?
With regards to the gas, that's the point I'm making.
Okay.
Right. It's to do with 2 points: gravity and the rotation. You can pick which one you wish to. If you
Again,
don't,
you're straw manning me here. I'm not actually arguing about the rotation of the Earth.
I know.
Just talking about a gas in a box.
And I'm talking about a gas in a box too. I'm not straw manning you. I'm addressing specifically that point about the gas.
Okay.
I'm just doing it in the context of centrifuge to make the point that you'll just stick with me. You'll see what I'm getting at.
Okay.
In this particular experiment, this gent's got 2 test tubes of, one's got a white liquid. I can't remember what it was called. It's a compound of some kind. And then he's got another test tube of muddy water. And all he does is he pours the solutions into the centrifugal test tubes, puts the test tubes in the centrifuge, spins it up to separate out the component elements of the solution. And once he's finished doing with it, he stops the centrifuge, and then he can show the results of the centrifuge. Now, when you were talking about the car and the gas, I want you to think about this on screen right now. This is the muddy water. Think about this as in the context of our atmosphere and the gases that are in our atmosphere going around the ball in layers like an onion. So the lowest.
Right, I'm not actually talking about a ball. I'm just talking about gas. This is the same physics as on a flat Earth. Like I'm not talking about anything to do with the rotation of the Earth. I'm just talking about what causes the buoyant force. And what you just showed is a perfect demonstration of what I'm trying to say. Basically, you apply an outward force and it separates out things. It puts the denser stuff on the outside, which is
Correct.
the direction of the force,
Correct.
and then the lighter stuff goes on the inside.
So
And because there's more dense stuff below than above, that things would get less dense, things get pushed inward. So I think this is a perfect demonstration of my exact argument.
right. So we agree that it's making the point.
Okay. Yes.
Right. Now, if centrifuge or gravity, centrifuge and gravity are opposing forces, do we agree?
Downward forces.
They're opposing, though. Centrifuge in the Earth context would be pushing out,
Yes.
whereas the gravity would be pulling in.
No, they're two different directions. They're not
Hello,
quite opposing.
Rumpus, by the way.
They're
Hello.
opposing forces in the context of the Earth, correct?
No, they're not, because the
On the
centrifuge-
equator.
Hang on,
centrifuge
Rumpus, there was
depends
another
on your
conversation.
latitude. If you're at the equator, it is. If you're at the equator, it is, but on latitude, it's not.
This is going away from what we were actually talking
Yeah,
about. which
Rumpus,
was-
just
Yeah,
be quiet
let's
for a
stick
moment.
to let's stick to the
Let's
point
stick
about
to
what
We're
buoyancy.
talking about what
Right.
gravity really
Right.
is.
Well,
Yeah,
the point that I'm
I
making
was
with
quite
regards to the
intrigued.
gases
I've got to
is
be honest,
if
Anthony. I was quite intrigued by what Philip had to say, and he's right. This is something that would work on both. It wouldn't matter if you're talking global
Yeah.
sphere until you add the centrifugal force of it spinning, which is
Yeah.
If
yeah.
you push on a gas, you can compress it, right?
right, but my
If it has
point
nowhere to
was,
escape, it will
if
turn
gravity,
into a liquid.
going back to Mark's original question over down being a thing, if down was really a thing and the Earth was really spinning, we would get centrifugal forces pushing the densest layer of our atmosphere away from the surface.
No, we wouldn't.
No, you're conflating the the downward direction with the centrifugal argument here.
I agree.
think.
Yeah, but it's relevant because down isn't down in a centrifugal system.
No,
Yeah, we've got
down has
gravity.
nothing to do with the centrifugal system.
Gravity
Right,
is stronger,
there's-
Anthony. Gravity is stronger. It overwhelms the centrifugal force you're talking about. So
Yeah, but
your
you know,
point is
gravity is the
irrelevant.
weakest of all the forces, though, Rumpus.
Yeah,
No,
we've got
there's
a great
there
big,
is
got a
a
great big,
downward-
got a great big.
There
planet
has to be a
underneath us.
downward force to pull you towards the Earth.
No,
There's
that's
some
Whatever
not
kind
model
of-
you
there
have.
is a
Downward
there's
force.
some sort of downward force regardless of the shape of the Earth.
And
No,
it's called
it isn't
gravity.
downward force.
Yes.
Down is the word we give it to describe what we
Yeah,
see.
Yeah, and it's in a particular
No,
direction, Anthony. It's in a very
No, but
particular
it's also a
direction.
setting. It's a constant.
There's a
and it
consistent direction
separates-
Yeah,
of
but
that
that's
Not a
direction.
direction. It's a state.
Yeah.
no, it's a particular direction. There's a
No, it
very
isn't.
specific
There is
direction.
there is no direction down on Earth.
There's
That's what we call it.
Yeah, we
No,
call
there
it
is.
that.
But it's
that's
not in
just
another
the label
direction.
that we
Towards
give it.
a
It doesn't
singular
mean that,
point.
that we're not talking about something.
Why is it pointing in that direction rather than sideways, up, down, diagonal, poking the eye shape?
And-
Poking the eyes.
and
We
down-
don't know.
Dense
That's the thing.
in
We
our
don't
in
know
the
why.
But actually,
It
but I
just
just
does
showed you a
that.
video which shows how you can change the direction of down by changing the net acceleration on the gas.
That's not what that video showed.
That's
No, it
exactly
doesn't.
what that video showed.
No,
It's
it's
not
not
centrifugal
Phil,
Sorry
force.
to
It's
interrupt you all.
force.
Philip, can
That
you please show
doesn't make
just mute you all just so I can hopefully get it across to Philip. Can you please show that video, Philip? Let's actually have it up on screen and actually have a look at it.
the downward force is still acting on those centrifuging.
No, it
materials.
isn't. There is no down.
it is.
You're all morons.
No, you're a moron. You don't
Ellie,
understand
it is,
basic
but
things,
if the
Anthony.
centrifugal
Yeah,
force,
very,
like
very
in your
basic.
experiment with
No,
the
we're-
tubes, is a lot bigger, then that will pretty much make the gravity constant negligible, because the centrifugal force in that setup is much stronger. It rotates very
Yeah,
fast.
but they're not. He's not.
So it
he's really not
overwhelms, and
talking
that
about
is the
that.
gravity
Like,
constant.
I'm gonna have to.
I know. I'm talking about what causes the buoyant force.
Yeah, which we don't
And-
know, and even mainstream physics kind of has to admit that they don't.
No,
know.
no, we definitely know how it works. We understand the
But space-time
thermodynamics of
bends?
gases.
There's no evidence that
observe how it
space-time
works.
bends.
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't.
No,
Yes, there is.
this is regardless of space time, whatever you want to.
Well, you're
I don't
saying
care.
You know that there's. You understand the mechanism beyond.
I understand the mechanism for what causes the buoyant force. Yes.
Have we
It's,
lost
No,
Anthony?
you don't. What is it then?
Where's
Space-time
Anthony
bending.
gone?
No.
The downward
What I'm saying
force
is that
a
there's a
thing.
downward force acting on the gas, the atmosphere, the plane, whatever the heck
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Yeah, but the mechanism that is conveying that force is not known.
No, but I'm not talking about the
Exactly.
mechanism for the force. I'm talking about the mechanism for what causes buoyancy.
Yes.
Well, no, the mechanism that causes the force is the same mechanism that's causing buoyancy.
Well,
Yes.
okay, I'm talking about like
Correct.
abstracting away what the cause of the force is.
You don't need
If
to know
there
what's
is a
causing the force to be able to describe what the force does. And Philip is showing you what the force does. He doesn't need to know what's causing it.
Yeah, but you know,
He knows it exists.
according to general relativity, it's not a force. It's a
I'm
curvature.
not talking about general relativity. I'm just saying, let's assume that there is a downward force acting on everything on the Earth. Let's just go with that.
The cause of the force is irrelevant.
Okay. So now I'm talking about that force. What is the microscopic mechanism behind? See, we know that air is made up of molecules. And so what is the consequence of a force acting on those molecules? And I assert that that is actually the force acting on these molecules, pulling them down, so that there's more dense air lower down you go and less dense air as you go up. A consequence of that is the buoyant force.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's
The
not.
separation
But you know
of the heavy and the
interesting that
light
in
into
mainstream
that
physics,
direction.
it's not described as a force. It's described as a curvature of space-time.
Well, it's described as a
that
curvature of
is
space-time
theoretical.
because it is independent of the mass. So if I drop anything, it always falls at the same rate, which is reminiscent of a fictitious force. If you look at the centrifugal force, again, that force doesn't depend on.
That's not
No,
completely
but I'm just
true.
saying,
If you
according to
drop
the
a
mainstream
ball
physics, it's
filled
not
with air
reminiscent
in
of
water,
a
it will
fictitious
actually
force, because
go
a
up.
fictitious force has more to do with an inertial frame.
But that's the point. In general relativity, gravity is an inertial force.
No, it isn't.
That is the whole idea
No, it is
behind
not.
the thing.
You're wrong. It's not.
No,
That's not how it's described. It's described as the fabric, the structure of empty space
being curved
distorting in the presence of mass. But there's no explanation as to why that happens at all.
But the distortion makes it appear like you're in a. Yes, the distortion that you're talking about makes it appear as if you're feeling an inertial force. That's what the distortion is.
But the problem is that there's no actual energy that's creating this force in that model, right? So it's not a force. There's no external. There's no.
Because it's your actual. It's because you're actually in an accelerating reference frame.
There is no energy.
So the problem
is a
that
constant.
it breaks
it's universal.
conservation.
There is
No,
no
it
way
doesn't.
to measure it.
It doesn't
except
break
by how
conservation
matter
laws.
responds in the
Not.
environment.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so where's the energy coming
So
from?
you don't need energy to apply a force. For instance, when you're standing on the floor, there is no. Although there are two forces being applied to you, one of gravity, and then the floor is pushing up.
No, gravity is not.
Oh, let me finish my sentence. And then the gravity pushing you down, and the floor is pushing up. There's a net force on you. There's no energy change going on here. The two forces cancel out. So you've got forces, but there's no energy being created or destroyed or moved around. So you can have a situation where there's no energy change and you have forces. So you were wrong when what you said earlier.
No, you disagree with the Einsteinian concept of gravity.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do, because it's not a force.
Do you understand that centrifugal
force? It's not a force, but you still follow geodesics.
Do you understand that centrifugal force is a fictitious force as well?
Yeah, I understand that.
Right. What makes it a fictitious force?
Because it's not that the thing is actually like curving. It's that its inertia wants it to keep going in a straight line, so it has to be constantly adjusted.
That's a reference frame.
It's the reference frame is being accelerated.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why it's a fictitious one.
That's exactly what gravity is saying. Gravity is saying
no, it's not.
An accelerating reference frame.
Exactly.
That is, look,
it's independent
exactly
of the
what it
reference.
says.
No, it isn't. I can come up with. Look, I'll just find it on Wikipedia.
You'll find that it's all to do. Fictitious forces are all to do with reference frames, and just like
gravity has
centrifugal
nothing
force,
to do with fictitious forces.
It does. It is a fictitious force.
That's exactly what it is.
Exactly what it is.
It's not.
Exactly.
You will not find any description of general relativity.
If you go to the Wikipedia page if you go to Wikipedia on gravity, it'll tell you that it's a fictitious force.
No, it will. Okay.
Yes, it will.
Okay, fine. Show me the quote right now. Then go on there, find the quote.
You should actually talk to Anthony about this because he was trying to explain this the other day. Actually,
correct.
I was there too. Actually, we remember we hung out a little after the chat ended, and we were just having. This is kind of a continuation of that discussion. And I put this same quote: "Gravity is most accurately described by the general theory of relativity, which describes gravity not as a force, but as a consequence of curvature of space-time." No, it's not a fictitious force because a fictitious force has to do with inertia. This is the curvature of space.
No, fictitious force has to do with the reference frame that you're in.
Okay, well, find me anything that ever has that describes the whatever they call it. What is it, like Riemannian space, or no, Minkowski space, as having to do having anything.
Minkowski space is flat space-time.
Right, but I'm just saying that this mechanism of gravity proposed by Einstein is never anywhere described as a fictitious force.
Yeah, it's described like that all the time.
Okay, well, show me then.
Maybe
Okay,
a fictitious force,
I'm
but
just going to get a quote.
the
I'm just gonna get a
curvature
quote.
of
Give me a moment.
space-time is a fictitious explanation because there's no proof.
Einstein's
that it
insight
is
was that
such a
no
thing.
local experiment can tell the difference between a gravitational field being in an accelerating reference frame.
Yeah, but that's not what you guys are arguing here. I'm just saying it's never described
Therefore,
as a fictitious force in physics has a specific meaning, and it has nothing to do with the Einsteinian gravity model.
It's linked to gravity as a fictitious force.
Gentlemen, we're not
And
going
here, I'll
anywhere
read it out. The notion of a fictitious force comes up from in Einstein's general theory of relativity. All fictitious forces are proportional to the mass of the object upon which they act, which is also true for gravity. This led Albert Einstein to wonder whether gravity was a fictitious force as well. He noted that a free-falling observer in a closed box would not be able to detect the force of gravity. Hence, free-falling reference frames are equivalent to an inertial reference frame, the equivalence principle. Following upon this insight, Einstein was able to formulate a theory with gravity as a fictitious force, attributing the apparent acceleration of gravity to the curvature of space-time. The idea underlines Einstein's theory of general relativity. See the Eötvös experiment. So you're totally 100% wrong.
Gish Gallop.
Well, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I'm sorry if you're too stupid to understand that. That's your problem, not mine.
No, I'm not too stupid to understand that. It's just that's not.
Well, someone said Gish Gallop because I'm just reading out something there that is a fact, and some idiot there doesn't understand what this is. That's their problem, not mine.
But look,
You don't have to be. You don't
acceleration and centrifugal force, they are forces that we can emulate very easily and stop. Gravity is not, but it seems to act the same, but we don't have any proof of what causes it. There's only theories about how it is supposed to be caused.
Whether
and it seems very similar to these other types of forces that we can.
Right, but the problem is in every other situation. So there's also there's the force, the apparent force that it gives to objects, but also in an accelerating reference frame, you see redshifting of light, and this has been shown in the laboratory that light gets redshifted if it moves perpendicular to the surface of the Earth. If you look up the Pound-Repka experiment, they did this back in the 1960s. And this is only indicative of an accelerating reference frame because light doesn't have any mass. So therefore, GR says that we live in an accelerating reference frame due to the curvature of space-time.
And we know, of course, general relativity has been proved by Einstein's experiment in the 1990s, or Eddington's experiment to prove general relativity.
No, it hasn't.
Yes, it has. That proved general relativity, as the orbit of Mercury also.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. Can you let me finish a sentence?
Heavenly bodies don't
let me finish a sentence, please. Then you can have your sentence. We'll go with that. And the orbit of Mercury also proved general relativity because it didn't conform to Newtonian forces. It only complied to general relativity. So we have two experimental proofs of the existence.
We have three.
Now
there's the gravitational redshifting too,
and gravitational redshifting as well.
No, because you can't rule out other possible reasons,
like
and
what?
also that I don't think you're going to replicate any of those experiments.
You're all enjoying the debate. We've got about half an hour left on this live stream. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support this channel, massive shout out to all who have done so on this live stream. Be sure to hit the super chat, which runs alongside this show while it's live, and there's also a link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But if you'd like to join the panel, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the discussion and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please do not swear. If you do, you will be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Massive thanks to all who have shared the show. If you've not done so already, please share, as it increases the live audience, and this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. There is approximately 30 minutes left on this live stream.
Yeah, because they're damn sight cleverer than you are, and they've got the equipment. I haven't.
So you say, but they
Well,
also think the Earth is a globe. So I think they're morons.
Yeah, so I'm right about that as well, and you're wrong.
guessed.
So the fact you think it's the flat Earth.
Yeah, you're right about nothing, Rumpus. You said that general relativity was validated by experiment.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Pound-Repke experiment.
Okay. Okay. Let's take. Hold on a second, Philip. Let me deal with Rumpus.
You're an idiot.
Right. Yeah. Experiment. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So general relativity. So share Rumpus's screen, Nathan. He's going to write down the phenomena observed, alternative hypothesis, independent variable, dependent variable, and the null. We want to see it.
Right.
Go ahead, Nathan.
You don't have to do those things because you're
Go
an
ahead.
idiot.
Oh, yeah, this is science.
No,
We have
it's not.
to
You don't
validate
understand what
by
science is.
experiment, Rumpus.
You do not understand what science is.
I forgot more in junior high than you'll ever know.
You don't. Okay.
Put
If you claim the
Nathan,
proof,
give him the
Rumpus,
screen.
then deliver it.
Give him the screen and let him write this stuff out for us.
I'll be very interested to know
Show
if you know
us.
something as basic as trigonometry.
Show
Do you know what
us.
trigonometry is? Hold on, I'll do that.
Validate.
But you just made a claim there.
Scientifically validated.
Hold on.
This isn't a math
I'll tell you, do we take turns in talking? Let's take turns in talking, shall we?
Rumpus.
I'll take turns.
Let's
Can we
take turns.
Can we
No,
take
Rumpus,
turns?
your position is that we should go talk to an astronomer because they're smarter than us,
No,
right?
astronomers are pseudoscience. He said he had an experiment. Let's see it, Rumpus.
Well, the experiment would be to observe the orbit of Mercury and to see whether it's compatible with the
No,
laws.
the heavenly bodies are not proof of any physical workings.
Okay, what's the hypothesis?
Well, the hypothesis is that you've got your Newtonian hypothesis and you've got your general relativity hypothesis.
Oh, come on. You said GR. Go with general relativity. Let's
Yeah, well, you've got two. You can say either
You've
two
got
alternatives.
two
We have two
possible ways.
hypotheses.
Do you have
Following
any
what's going on,
Earth-based
and then you
experiments
take
that
the
can be done
experiment to
on
see which
Earth,
one is
Rumpus?
the
Because
whoa,
the
whoa,
heavenly
No,
bodies...
no. That's false. That's a false dichotomy kind of approach.
Well, no, you can have other theories.
Logic, it's not an
I would actually
experiment.
agree with you. That doesn't prove it's one or the other because you could have a third theory. I agree with you about
Get out of here. You have
What
to
we
have a
can do-
hypothesis
Well,
before you have a
Quantum just
theory.
learned to take turns. I was just responding to this chap here.
I'm
Yeah,
responding to
no,
you.
Patty, can I? Yeah, we'll give you take turns, please. Right.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nathan.
What you can do is to invalidate the Newtonian one. You can say that it's not compatible.
Quantum
with
mechanics
the-
already
Please,
invalidated
look, take
Newtonian.
turns, John. It's not. You can show from the experiment by observing the orbit of Mercury that it's not compatible with Newtonian.
Show the experiment.
For God's sake, behave yourself. So
Well, he keeps asking
I'll
you
tell
the
you
same
what,
thing.
sir.
You've said you've got an
let's
experiment,
take
Rumpus.
turns, shall
Can
we?
you show it?
And keep on never letting me finish our bloody sentence. You can show from the orbit of Mercury that it's not compatible with Newtonian gravity. Go ahead, John.
Can
We
you?
Bring us some
We want to
Earth-based
see the
experiments that
Nathan.
can
Have him
actually
share his
Can you
screen.
describe
confirmed to
can you even
be
describe
Oh, my
the
goodness.
thing that you're
physical nature of
claiming
things.
at all?
Well,
Can you
the
explain
orbit
like
of
what
Mercury.
observations?
Well, the observation of the orbit of Mercury, because the ellipse, I mean, it's a highly elliptical orbit, and that twists
Earth-based
round.
experiments,
So
Rumpus.
Rumpus, you've been asked
Twist around? What do you
specifically.
mean it
Yeah,
twists
I can't. I've not
Rumpus.
been able to finish a sentence here.
Well, you've been
The
asked to
ellipse-
present
the
your
ellipse precesses-
hypothesis. So what's your hypothesis?
Right. There's a way that the elliptical orbit of Mercury should precess or not, depending on the theory you wish to, the hypothesis you have. So you can say, I'm going to use the Newtonian one, in which case there'll be a certain level of precession of the orbit of Mercury, or I can go with the general relativity one, and you expect a different precession. So, and then you make the
What's the hypothesis?
dearie me.
Give
So
us
you
the
make the
hypothesis.
observation. Dearie me. So you make the you've got two hypotheses. You could have a third one. I think whoever the chat.
Let's go with just one.
Num saying you doesn't exclude, and that's absolutely right. You could have a third hypothesis, but
Oh
what we
my
can
God.
do is invalidate the Newtonian one.
do we have any
Right, go ahead,
Earth-based
John, or
experiments
Which
that
one
Okay, so
leads
let's
us-
invalidate
which-
the Newtonian one, and then
Only-
we'll invalidate
Okay.
general
Okay.
relativity.
Yeah, let's do 'em.
So
Let's
what
do
you
'em
They
all.
both are equally spurious because they're making enormous assumptions about the nature of what we're observing that have no evidence to support them.
They have
Yes.
mountains of evidence.
It's
So what we can
pseudoscience.
do, what we can do
Let's
is
get the
obviously make that.
hypothesis.
Oh, John,
That's what we're
John, you'll get your turn. You have a turn. You get a turn again.
No, you don't
Right,
tell
so,
me when I
John,
get a
John,
turn.
you get
Rumpus.
a turn in a minute.
You could-
So we can make that.
I'm surprised
as
you
I
could
said to
barely
you,
breathe
John,
without
John,
a slobber nurse. Now,
right,
give
John,
us the
you're behaving
alternative
like
hypothesis.
Debbie. You're behaving like Debbie. Right. So
Give us the alternative
I will
hypothesis.
do that, but I'm responding to Num.
We asked you 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Do it.
give me a chance. Right, so Num was saying, how are you going to do that experiment? And the orbit shows a certain level of precession, which is not compatible with Newtonian gravitational theory. So therefore, we can invalidate that one as being a
That's not a hypothesis.
Hold on.
Hypothesis.
Rumpus.
You can
No,
say
it's not.
Give
you don't
us your
understand what hypothesis
hypothesis.
is.
Yes,
for
I
the
do
experiment that you
understand
think
what
is
it
valid.
is. You don't. You're
No,
a
you don't.
pretender clown.
You don't even understand what
You
the
wouldn't.
atmosphere is.
You wouldn't be able to pass 5th grade general science, sir.
Oh, right,
Give us
okay.
the alternative hypothesis.
Right, John.
Right now.
John, could you define density for me?
Right now.
Could you define density for me?
No,
Is it just-
Rumpus,
Oh
he's
my
asking you for
goodness
your
gracious.
alternative hypothesis. He's asked you several times. So far,
Well,
you've
I've already
told us why one would be invalid, and you haven't presented your hypothesis. So present it.
Well, I did. Oh, okay. Well, all right. I mean, I could share my screen. Right. Okay. You said, do you want me to write it down on a?
Yes.
Yes, I do. Exactly.
Okay. I'll write it down on here
You're
then.
screen sharing now. Let's see you write down the hypothesis.
Right. So
This should be good.
let me just
Yeah.
share screen this. Meanwhile, while I'm doing this, John can tell us what define density
No.
for us.
We'll
Density
wait.
equals mass over volume, but that's not what it
Don't
is. So
obfuscate,
get
just
on with the
get to it.
hypothesis.
You know something that Anthony Riley doesn't know, so that's a
Don't
No.
obfuscate.
Stay
That's
on the
not what it
topic
is,
here.
though.
Yeah, no, I just wanted that was an aside while I was doing this. I was just
No side thing. Let's just do this. Come on.
Just that
You
Anthony
want
would know
to
what that is.
create a distraction. You want to create a
Well,
smoke
it
screen.
was just
No,
I
but
just
you
wanted
want
to-
to ride
No,
and
let me-
wriggle.
Let
Let's
me
do
give
it.
him. Let me give him another question while he's writing his alternative hypothesis down. Give me the definition of spontaneous parametric down conversion.
I don't know what that is. That's something you've
Bet
obviously
you
read.
don't because
Oh,
you're
what an
clueless.
idiot! You're a moron. You don't know
wouldn't
what
know. You wouldn't know, Num. No, I don't think Quantum Rays. Quantum Rays doesn't understand half the things he talks about. and I
Hold
bet he
on,
just
let's
made-
not
Sure.
get
That's like a
sidetracked.
phrase
Hold
he's
on,
read
John.
from somewhere
Let's
he's
not
Sure,
get
I
sidetracked.
don't.
Right, we've got the
Believe me.
hypothesis, the orbit.
Right, the orbit of Mercury. So you can have two.
Check.
You can have
Hi,
two
sir.
competing
Hi,
hypotheses.
sir.
1, 2.
Can
Check
hear
1,
you.
2.
Hello,
Wait a
hello.
second, I can't see it.
Am I making this big enough?
Right, no one interrupt the rumpus. I want to see him write this hypothesis down.
The orbit of Mercury is compatible with the Newtonian model of gravity. I just need to make that this. Hold on a second. Wrapped properly. So we've got the Newtonian model of gravity, which requires a precession.
Check 1, 2.
Hello.
A precession of the orbit of Mercury. Oops. Of angle theta. Get the angle theta per unit time, and then we can have another hypothesis.
No, just one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We can have two competing hypotheses.
No,
problem.
we can't. Just one. We want it, and then we
all
want
right.
you
Then
to,
if you want to just restrict the that thing,
We-
okay.
And we can just
yeah.
rule out
We, now we
Newtonian
want
with
the
this.
independent variable and the dependent variable, please.
Okay, that's now. Do we need an independent variable here? No, I don't think we do.
Well, in a
That's 'cause you-
hypothesis.
No, you don't.
Wait a
you don't
second,
need
my
an
turn.
independent variable.
You already
don't
made
need-
you said no independent variable. Okay.
Not in this case. No, I don't think you do need. an
Not in
independent
this case. In every single
don't.
scientific hypothesis.
No,
Well, excuse me.
you're wrong.
Rumpus,
In
can you
every-
stop saying
Oh
no
my
and you're wrong and let him get to the end of his sentence?
Okay, all right. That's okay, Nathan. Yeah, right. You're right.
In every single scientific hypothesis, it contains two variables. One is the independent, one is the dependent. Your hypothesis or your experiment is your hypothesis test. You have to have an independent and dependent variable in your hypothesis so as to test it.
Actually, I might be. Yeah, I think
What
actually.
if there's 3 variables?
Yes, in
What
this
if
case,
there's
we
4
do have.
variables?
We're gonna get to the third variable. One second.
So what was that, Philip?
What if there's 5 variables in your system? What if there's 8? What if there's 10?
Yeah,
Then guess what?
Then what do? Oh, I guess we can't do science anymore.
If you can't control them, Philip, then it's not an experiment. Experiment from Penn State University. There should be 3 categories of variables in every experiment: the dependent, the independent, and the controlled. Now show us the independent, the dependent, and controlled, please.
You don't seem to understand the difference between observation and an experiment. Observation still leads to...
Yeah, observation is looking at something. An experiment is testing the cause and effect.
And you can deduce things from observation.
You cannot deduce things in science. It's experiment. Everything
that's why I made a point that heavenly bodies can't be used to
experiment
prove all of that.
From Richard Feynman. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. And that simple statement is the key to science. 1 second.
Observations don't
Max
prove
Planck.
Conducting experiments.
No, then you're not doing science.
No, you're incorrect. You can from observation.
No, I am correct.
No, you're not correct.
Experiment.
Can I offer something here?
Experiment is the only means of knowledge at our disposal. Everything else is poetry and imagination, Rumpus. Max Planck.
Hey, check it out. Check it out. If so, like, let's say a potential hypothesis, right? Because Rumpus, hi Rumpus. The thing is this: is that like the hypothesis could be, let's say, postulated: do we live in one concurrent system that uniformly, dictates and like affects each other, right? Like that could be, or like the idea that we live in a system that the Earth and the Sun and the Moon and the stars all work together. So that could be a hypothesis, right?
That's not a scientific hypothesis. What's your independent variable?
Well, take it like this. Your independent. Take it like this. Like your independent variable, let's say, could be how light comes into the so you're really off of the study of light and the hypothesis that you live in one congruent system that works together. You could try to make a determination, and your experiment would be, let's say. Because I don't know if you found out, John, I've been trying to help out the ballers with their arguments. So I'm trying to postulate the idea that if you were to calculate that the sun, and as it enters into our Earth, that its effects will teach us about the rest of this system that all works together. And so, right? Would that satisfy?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and formulate that, and we'll get back to you. So,
well, yeah, no, I'm trying to help the ballers out because I don't think they understand the language that you're using.
Yeah. So let's go to California. Hold on a second. Let's go to California State University.
Would you agree?
Let's go to California State University. The key word is testable. That is when you will perform a test.
You don't understand this variable observation.
Might be related. That is when you are doing a real experiment. You are testing variables, Rumpus. So give it to us.
Understand the difference between an observation and experiment. Philip, would you agree?
Yes, I do. An observation.
I do believe actually. I withdraw. I think I'm going to withdraw my claim there weren't any variables. I think there are actually 2. Would you agree those are 2? Philip, would you agree those are 2 independent variables for this testing?
By definition, independent variables have to be changeable.
Do they? I'm not sure about that. Isn't it just one that causes the effect?
Sorry, Rumpus, did you really just ask that question?
Your independent variable could be the sun, right?
The independent variable has to...
The problem is this is not an empirical... You can't attack...
There you go. You said it all. So let's talk about...
Yes, but it doesn't mean it's not science.
Hold on. I want to get...
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt you all. Rumpus, did you understand what was just said?
I missed in the clutter.
Well, maybe if you shut your mouth a little bit and stop interrupting, saying, no, you're wrong. You're doing it right now, Rumpus. You're doing it right now.
I was quiet.
Shut your hole and try and understand what's being explained to you by people smarter than you. You dumb little idiot.
You're a twat, Nathan.
Okay. Listen, Rumpus.
Philip, do you agree? Are you sure you need to?
Rumpus, you need to shut your mouth and listen to the people who are smarter than you. What part of that don't you understand, dumbass?
Philip, the only person smarter than you.
Shut your mouth.
No, I'll keep my mouth.
Shut your mouth, or I'll kick you out. You don't understand what's being explained to you because you're an idiot. It's been explained to you why a dependent and independent variable is required in an experiment. You don't understand that. You seem to think an observation is sufficient. It isn't. Now you're saying that you don't understand what an independent variable is. You're an idiot.
No, you don't understand, Nathan. Philip, are you sure you have to be able to change the independent variables to constitute an observation?
My God, he's just said it again. You are quite literally dumb. Rumpus, you are an idiot.
Philip, are you sure this is an observation? Remember, this isn't an experiment. So
yes, it is an experiment. What part of that don't you understand, you thicko? We're doing experiments, you moron.
This is not an experiment.
Yes, it is.
You just said it was.
No, I didn't.
I know you guys have a beef. Can we just like calm down for like 5 seconds and just have a reasonable conversation?
Sure.
Okay.
Philip,
Before you finished your breath, Philip, Rumpus started talking.
Yeah, well, I was asking him a question.
Don't ask anything. Open your ears and listen to the people who are smarter than you.
Rumpus is asking a question. All right, let's just...
I'm not interested in his question. He doesn't understand what an independent variable is. He's a moron. He's got nothing to add here because he's thick.
You don't understand what it is.
So let's just... Okay. Let's just back up a little bit, okay?
I'm not...
No, let's not back up. Let's stress it again. Rumpus is a retard. He literally doesn't understand what science is. He's dumb. Dumb as they come, and he's asking, do you actually have to be able to vary an independent variable? He is quite literally dense.
See, if I look at...
Okay, but
Nathan, hold on. Let me
described
speak
this
for a
as an
second,
experiment
please.
at the beginning of this.
No, I didn't. No, I never said that.
Yes, you did, you moron.
Yes, you did. So I think you have to at least...
I'm starting to come to the conclusion that he is
Yes,
actually
he did.
thick.
Yeah,
It's
you're
not
right.
just
That's
our
why I
Tom.
came in.
He's
you did
actually
I did,
dense.
I may have called. I should have called it an observation.
We didn't ask for an observation, you thicko. Try to listen. We asked for an experiment, you retard. Are you also deaf as well as stupid?
Like a prat.
You are
Rumpus,
deaf
the problem
and
is you make
stupid.
your own argument look like shit.
No,
Yeah, Rumpus, you are humiliation to the globe argument.
No, Nathan.
You can laugh. You are a humiliation to your side of this argument. You literally don't understand anything to do with this subject in regards to science. You're asking other people who are clearly superior to you intellectually to define if you need to vary a variable. You're a retard. I cannot believe my ears. You are the most stupid person to ever grace this panel, you complete idiot.
No idea what you're talking about.
You're an idiot.
So,
That's what I'm talking about.
Philip, there is a concept of an observation. In that, I do not believe you need to be able to change the independent variable.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you very much, you an idiot, Nathan.
Oh,
idiot,
my
John.
goodness
Excellent.
gracious.
You
So
just
this
put
is
your foot in your own mouth there,
This is a
Rumpus.
guy who's doing a PhD, you morons, and he bloody well knows much more
PhD?
about
We don't
this.
need philosophers. What does PhD
Whereas,
stand
John, I suspect you could barely do.
What does
trigonometry.
PhD stand for, Rumpus?
You could barely do.
I'm working on a PhD in physics.
What does PhD stand for, please?
The Doctor of Philosophy. But I suspect
Now,
you.
I'm not doing philosophy here. We're doing science here.
Yes, but that's what we could give
Yes,
to people who
that's
do
what I
science.
do.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what I do.
Right,
Yeah,
that's
so
right,
John-
Philip.
John,
You're
I
next,
suspect-
Philip.
John, do you know what a sine
Okay.
function? John, do you know what basic trigonometry is?
I'll tell you what. This is a science discussion,
But you
not
don't know
a
any
math
science.
discussion.
You
right?
don't know any
find-
science.
Go find a math forum or a cake decorating forum.
You don't
and
know any
leave
science.
this to
John.
adults.
You don't know
Okay?
any science.
You don't even know what an independent variable
I
is.
do, and I've just established with Philip. I've got my definition was absolutely right. For an observation, you do not need to be able to change an independent variable.
The
Contrary to what
observation
Nathan
is
said,
step one.
You do
The
not understand what
independent
you're talking
variable
about, John.
is in the hypothesis. It's not in
Yes, but
step
you don't
one.
need to be able to
It's
change
in
it.
step
You idiot.
3.
You don't need to be able to
Hypothesis,
change it.
independent
The
variable.
independent variable is what causes
Let's
the
just
dependent
see.
variable.
Oh, man.
But
Everybody,
you
let's
don't
just calm
need
down,
to be able
okay?
to change it. The point is, you do not need to be able to change an independent variable to make an observation. As
Yes, you
Philip
do.
confirmed, you are wrong, John. As you are
You're
every single
wrong.
time.
We're
You are
not talking about an observation. We're talking about the experiment.
Well,
We're on
I
step
should have.
4.
Okay, I did call it an experiment earlier, and I should have called it an observation. I'll accept that part.
Yeah, so it's not science. It's only the first step.
An
of the
No,
observation
that's
is
not
not
true.
science. An
Thank
observation
you,
is science.
Rumpus. Thank you, Rumpus, for the
Thank you. Yep. Thanks, Rumpus.
Right. So the point is,
okay. So let's just talk about orbits here. Let's just not worry about general relativity. Let's just say I want to test Newtonian orbital mechanics, right?
Newtonian mechanics.
Yes.
We already tested
Yes.
that. We already tested
Look,
Newtonian
I'm
mechanics.
just talking hypothetically. So let's say
Hypothetically?
position of the planets in orbit, right?
There
There's
are no
way I can
planets.
do
You're
that.
begging the question.
Yeah, you're making.
I am
you have
talking
to
about a
accept. How many
hypothetical
assumptions do we have to
situation.
accept to begin
Yeah,
this?
right.
I'm talking about a hypothetical situation that we're trying to just discuss how one would use observation and induction to prove a hypothesis.
No, you can't do that. To prove a hypothesis, you got to test it. That's experiment.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what he's talking about.
If I don't
Try
have
listen to
a
what he's
direct,
saying. Try
John,
You
listening.
have
to
to.
him.
I am listening to what he's
You're
saying.
not. You're not
An
listening.
experiment
John,
is a hypothesis test,
And that's what he
Can
was
you
the problem. The problem.
speak?
not
Guys.
induction.
That's
Yo,
what
for
he
the-
was describing. And
Can I
Ballers
please
is
just
here.
talk for fuck's
Jesus.
sake?
do you know what
Hey, guys,
induction
guys.
is? Do you know what induction is, John?
Goodness. Hey, do you know what spontaneous parametric
Yeah,
down
we've done
conversion
that.
is?
John, do you know what induction
Yeah,
is?
we already did that.
No, John,
Don't
do you
answer
know what-
that.
John, we've done that. John, do you know what
Spontaneous
induction is?
parametric down
Rumpus.
conversion.
John, it's a key part of
Yeah,
science.
we're not going anywhere
John,
with
it's
this.
a key part of science. Do you know what
It's
induction
a key
is?
part of science.
It's a key
What's
part
science?
of science. Do you know
What's
what
science?
induction is?
What's
Yo,
eigenstate
Rumpus.
thermalization
Hold on, can we establish
hypothesis,
this, please?
John?
Please, I really would like an answer to this.
Eigenstate thermalization hypothesis.
I would
know
like
what-
to know the answer to
phase
that
transition.
question, actually. I think John's got a good point. He's
What's
just said it's a key
Kibble-Zerk
part. Rumpus
mechanism?
has just said it's a key part of science, and the question he got in reply was, what's science? So, Rumpus, what is science?
The attempt to find out how reality works.
Sorry, a study of the natural world.
That'll do, yeah, that's good.
Right, so has that
very
got anything to do with
simple.
philosophy or mathematics?
Well, you have to use mathematics to do that.
When we're studying what?
The natural world, you have to use mathematics to come
So
up with
should we
hypotheses
be
to
begging the
explain.
question about
No, you
orbits?
don't.
Hold on. Should we be begging the
Okay,
question
okay.
about orbits and planets if we're studying the natural world?
Well, we have observations of orbits, so what's the problem?
Observations of what, sorry?
We have observations of orbits, so yes, what's the
All right,
problem?
let me
No,
pick a different
observations
hypothetical.
Oh yeah,
Guys,
Rumpus. You have to
guys,
you
concede
have
the
no
fact that these
certainty.
are Rumpus. You have to
proof
concede the
that
fact
they are
that these are
physical.
optical phenomena at some
The
point.
orbit
Of
is
course.
assumed
Until the
based
ball
on your
earthers
model.
realize this, your argument looks like shit. Okay.
Well,
Forgive me,
Your
our
argument
argument.
is good,
Our
actually.
argument.
Let's take a step back. All right, let's just say I have a hypothetical system where I don't have any control over the different variables that go on. It's very complicated, it's very complex. And if I make observations at different points, maybe different variables which I can measure will change, but I have no way of knowing ahead of time what those relationships are. How do I approach and try to understand that scientifically?
Follow the scientific method.
But I don't have any way of controlling anything.
Then it's not science.
no, you don't know
Okay.
what
Go
you're
to
talking
fairy tale storytelling.
You
There's just
understand-
there's inherent limits on what science can what
Right,
can be
but I can
discovered
measure
through the
something. I
scientific
can
method.
say-
And the fact that those limitations exist does not in any way change the definition of science.
There's a limit to what induction can tell you, but John doesn't understand what induction is because he doesn't understand science. So that's the limit that puts upon us because we can't prove. And as I said earlier, if you drop something 99 times, you don't know the 100th time it's going to behave differently. From induction,
The point is that
you have to then presume that the 100th time will behave like the
It's
previous
tantamount
99.
to charging
But John
the
doesn't understand
Dalai,
this
the
idea. It's
Pol
rather
Pot with
fundamental.
Dalai Lama, the
That's what places
genocide.
limits. That's
You're a
what places
moron.
limits on what science can do.
He doesn't even know
It's
what an
induction.
independent variable is.
You don't
you
understand
keep on saying
anything,
this,
John.
but I
That is
don't
not
see
matters.
anything. I don't see you like giving anything to this conversation
Exactly,
at all.
John's just
Yeah,
rambling.
I'm exposing pretender
You're
clowns.
not exposing
You,
anything.
Yeah, okay, fine, whatever.
I've-
You're not
I've
really
dem-
being a productive member of this panel.
yeah,
I've
because you're a
demonstrated-
pretender clown.
I've
That's
described
the
what the
production.
independent variables are, John, in this observation.
fine.
I've just got them on
Whatever.
the
You're
screen.
not really interested in actually bringing this discussion forward.
You-
That's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
I know.
described the independent
So
variables.
go back
John,
to
I know
your
exactly
cake
what they
decorating
are. The
threads, and we'll
question
deal with the
was an
science here.
observation whether
Yeah,
or not
maybe I
you need
should.
to be able to vary
Yeah.
them. That's the only question. But you
You
don't
should. I
understand-
told you I was going to wing you around
you
a little
don't
bit by your
understand the
intellectual
most-
short
you
hairs,
don't
right,
understand
Philip?
what induction
This is it.
The
Hey,
most
shut the
basic-
rumpus
Rumpus,
up and let me
Rumpus
go
is
at Philip
talking
here.
The most basic
non-stop.
part of science is understanding what
Rumpus,
induction
stop
is.
talking.
Hey,
You're
Nathan.
talking non-stop.
Deductively.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
keep saying the
Let's
same
go through
thing
the pound
over and over
replica-
again.
replica experiments. Right.
Rumpus, you're talking non-stop.
No, I'm not. I just want John over to talk to me because he's worried he doesn't like being exposed and not understanding what induction, which is very
Yeah,
basic to experiments. He doesn't
I'm
understand.
worried sick. I'm shaking here in my boots.
Well, you should
Let's
be.
get
You
it,
don't-
Philip.
You don't understand how stupid you are. That's the problem.
Yeah, I know.
And you're
So in
fraud.
the pound replica experiment, what they did was they took a laser, some sort of light source, and they showed that when you shoot this laser or this light source vertically, there was a blue shift when it was going down perpendicular to the surface of the Earth. And then when they shown it in the horizontal direction, parallel to the surface of the Earth, there was no blue shift. Basically showing that there is some phenomena which is causing us to be in an accelerating reference frame. Now, you can argue that that's not general relativity, but the value that they got in the amount of blue shift exactly matched that of general relativity, with the Earth being the radius of the size that it's purported to be.
Okay.
So how was the blue shift
Nathan?
measured?
Have him
How was that measured?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Was the blue shift measured by observation from the Earth, or
yes,
was it
it
actually?
was on the Earth.
No, that's good. That's another observation. But was it actually confirmed? Like, was there higher up measurements of this light to see what was actually happening there?
It was done.
Or is it just something that
probably
appears
3 or
to be
4
like
times.
that?
But you're also claiming that they used that somehow the globe model was implicated in the assumptions of the experiment, right? Like, or that it
So the
confirmed,
hypothesis
it confirms
was the hypothesis
was it confirmed that the light
if
properties actually changed higher up, or did it just look like it did from the ground?
What do you mean light properties changed? I mean, you can measure the
talking
amount of
about a blue
energy
shift,
that is
right?
absorbed by the material, right? And that tells you how much the energy of the photons have changed due to redshift or blue shift.
Well, you
Right, well,
just said
I'm
that
gonna agree
if you
with you
shoot
that there's a
the
downward
laser
force.
horizontally, that there's no change. So there's
Exactly, that's
plenty
the
of
point.
material there absorbing the light. And if it was shot upwards, that it did change with the blue shift. So was that actually confirmed
Yes.
with
Yes, that was
local
confirmed.
measurements higher up? That was indeed the case? Or did it just look like that from the ground?
How much and what degree of change are we talking about here?
It's fairly small, but these are very sensitive devices that they're working with, so they can
Right,
actually
but not anything that we're ever going to be able to have access to or reproduce, right?
So I'm not going to get an
Yeah,
answer.
if you want to
There
be
was no confirmation with actual
hyper-skeptical about
local
it, then that's
measurements
fine.
of this
mean,
blue
Well,
shift
I
higher up.
think we have every reason to be hyper skeptical when we know that they do things like fake moon landings and, you know, lie to us about lots of other, you know, major
But
accomplishments.
this is not; these are not affiliates of NASA. I mean, these are people.
No, I know. I'm just saying it gives us a reason to be generally. If these people aren't calling out the moon landing themselves, then I have every reason to be hyper skeptical of whatever they say.
So to be fair, I know a bunch of academics, and they could literally care less about like what sort of weird anomalies are happening on the moon, or like, you know, on the ISS. Like
I'm not
most
talking about weird
people don't
anomalies
pay
on the moon. I'm
attention.
talking about where if they're not. I'm saying if they're not keeping other scientists honest themselves, then I have every reason to be hyper skeptical of their claims. If they're not participating in the game of honest science and auditing science, then I have every reason to be hyper skeptical of their motives and claims.
But if someone who's studying, I don't know, biology or something, are you expecting them to call out NASA, like people working on
No, but
space
we're talking
science?
about people who are studying physics that you seem to think are doing experiments that might tell us something about the shape of the Earth or about gravitation as a phenomenon.
I mean, these people, when someone did this test, they assume that the Earth is round. Like this is, in their mind, it's a demonstrable fact that the Earth is round.
I think that pretty much sums it up nicely. When they did these tests, they assumed the Earth was round. And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the panel for joining and making this debate possible. And also a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully for sharing this debate. If you've not done so already, be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!